You can't get rid of me. So it's been a few days since I gave the announcement for people that care about my store. That Record Store Day was bumped again. It was bumped from the original April 18th date of 2020 to a June 20th, and that has now been ixnayed. And we're talking three Record Store Day drops. August 29th, September 26th, and October 24th. All Saturdays. Mark them on your calendar, circle them, whatever you got to do to remember 3 days, okay? The list is supposedly being broken up into three equitable parts. I don't know if this means by distributor, alphabetical, artist blood type. I have no idea your blood type. I guess we'll find out. So the first list I'm supposed to be getting June 1st. We'll see how this goes because, again, we're doing a normal Record Store Day. You put in the order and then your stuff ships like 5, 6 weeks later. In this case, we're putting in one order, then another order, then another order. Then the first shipment arrives for August 29th. And depending on how that goes, then you're wondering, like, do I need to adjust the order for the second one? Should it be smaller? Should it be larger? I mean, this creates a whole host of, like, unknown variables. And I kind of want to get your consensus on some of these things. So feel free to, put something in the comments on Facebook or YouTube or wherever you're watching this. I think it's good in a lot of ways because I think it creates a steadier flow of business to spread things out. I've always said, why does it have to be a crush of people in one day like this? I understand the whole like celebration of what a record store is and the bands. I love the bands. And obviously, I don't think we can even do the bands because of just viral issues. Can't even use that word that way anymore. But I think, it's sort of like, it's funny. On my receipts, I've always put "Make every day a record store day" on them, and I get to live it now. Be careful what you wish for, right? It's going to be interesting because you're dealing with three of these events. So, depending on what the response is, and here I am thinking like, oh, I'm going to have to ask my volunteers to come in and put themselves out there to help three times now. It's kind of a lot to consider, and how many people want to give up all their Saturdays for that too. So, but I've got customers who didn't like big lines and big crowds, and this is perfect for them because it's like, oh, now I can do the social distancing thing a little bit more. It's bad for us because in some ways we only would have gotten exposed once by certain people. Now we might get exposed three times, although my plan to head this off involves doing curbside, I think, and an email system. And now I'll tell more about this as time goes on. The problem that I have with this is that there's going to be people, even if I announce this weeks or a month in advance, there are going to be people that don't know that this was the way things were done. They're going to show up at the door and be angry because that's not how the line was working. They'll go to another store and say like, "Oh, did you see how that one store was doing? It was terrible." And I'm like, I'm just trying to be organized and kind of keep like everybody's health in mind. So there's no way to please everybody, and all I can do is ask for people's patience. But I'm trying to stay away from the physical line as much as possible, and been knocking around the idea of just leaving the sales floor closed until like noon or 1 p.m. And once the curbside is done, then opening the door and having very limited people. I'm talking like no more than three or four at any given time. Just because, there'll probably be other things in the store that they will want to look at. Now, granted, they'll have to be masked, gloved. You'll have to sanitize your hands at the door. First cough, somebody's like out the door. No, I don't want to be like militant about that, but you kind of have to like you got to think of all these things now, right? And so I guess it depends on what the restrictions will be at the time and how people's health, and the reporting in this area on the health situation is going. And also, you may have seen that they're loosening up some of the restrictions for online sellers. So instead of waiting until the following day, now you'll be able to sell that product at 1 p.m. on that day. Good and bad. There are going to be people that break the rules like always and try to sell it first thing in the morning and, mess it up for people like us that try to follow the rules. And at least we have a Discogs page now, so we can sell those things that way later. Um, I don't know how many people will forego doing curbside and just say, I just want to try and get this online later and not deal with people. Those kind of things also make you feel like, should I order so much? Maybe I should be ordering less. And that's a disservice to the consumer because if there are enough people out there that want this, they're going to be upset that they couldn't get it because the stores didn't realize what the demand was. So that's another reason that I had sort of asked, like, give me some feeling about what things you're looking for. Um, so that being said, I mean, that's one whole ball of wax. Now we have to deal a little bit with the product issue side of things. And I haven't even really mentioned this yet. But, all the Record Store Day product for the stuff that was coming out in April has already been manufactured and is all collecting dust in warehouses right now, waiting to get into your hands. And that's very frustrating. But, so we've got this sort of three-pronged sort of attack of Record Store Day in the fall. Uh, you know, we're talking about competing against all the releases that were supposed to come out in the spring that have now been bumped into the summer and the fall. So there's all that. Plus, there are releases that are scheduled for the summer and fall that were originally scheduled for summer and fall. Like I'm hearing the Beatles, Let It Be, the anniversary edition was supposed to be like September, October, from what rumors were. I don't know if I'm sure that that would take precedence in some ways, but you don't know what's going to happen with all the other things. Will things that were supposed to come in out in the fall get pushed to next spring, like a year later? Oh, it gets frustrating thinking about this stuff. Then you also have the issue of economics. People are running low on cash, maybe because of what's been happening. So, how many people are going to buy records, which for me are essential, and I love them? But it's also a little bit like, are their wallets going to be, as fluid? And maybe they'll consider this a luxury item and, oh, I'll just pass. So, it's another thing that the record store owner has to take into account about, like, what's the demand for this? Do I want to take a chance on bringing this in? And it's all very complex. So, and to add one more layer onto this, actually, there's a couple, but I just was informed the other day that, plants have been shut down because of the virus. And somebody called from one of my distributors and said, oh, you want to order this X new release, whatever? Yeah, you might want to get double the amount if you can, just because they're not going to have any more of this. They're completely sold out, and you probably won't be able to order it for another 2 or more months. So you gotta like think, well, yeah, there's such a drain on it's like toilet paper, right? There's such a drain on the existing inventory. Even things now that I see that were sort of like kind of mainstays are starting to dry up a little bit because there's nobody there either making them or shipping them. So then you add on top of that the lacquer plant fire that we had earlier this year that completely decimated the ability to make a lot of records quickly that they were already dealing with. So 2020 has been a real challenge. And I don't know, those of you that are out there probably like me wondering, is Black Friday Record Store Day going to happen? When they initially announced all these changes, they said uh, there will not be a record store day in 2020. They did not say there will not be a Black Friday Record Store Day. I'm assuming maybe not. I can't say that 100%, but you think like, well, would they do three record store days like that and then immediately follow it another the next month with another? Seems like a lot to take on. At the same time, they would have to be plotting out what those releases are now. They would have to be reserving time this summer to have them all manufactured. Are they going to want to compete with all of the other records that have to be made for all of the releases that were regularly scheduled? And that's something that always happens, except now you're dealing with backups and illness and distance considerations. You can't be right next to the guy at the next thing going with the pressing machine. I mean, I don't know. You have to think about the warehouses that ship the product. If someone in there gets sick, it's like the Amazon plants, right? Or warehouses where, all of a sudden there's like, we can't get anything coming out of Kentucky right now, so everybody just sit tight for a week or two. I mean, I'm hoping that they're sort of diversifying some of the locations of where they can ship this stuff from now, but they might not be because we're all sort of still in certain lockdown issues, depending on where you are. Look, I know this is a lot to think about. And then on top of everything else, we have a presidential election. And if you don't know what a presidential election does to retail, every time there is one, it's always difficult. And so we're layering that on top of stores who are still waiting for government assistance, their stimulus checks. You know, everybody is hurting. So there's a lot. Yeah. I'm not trying to bring you down, but just trying to be realistic. So, anyway, I just want to end this by saying, look, I always appreciate people who have been stepping forward and helping to contribute however you can. There have been a lot of people who've been doing orders at curbside, online, um, and a variety of other ways that have been truly, truly touching. So thank you to all of you, and I'm hoping that we can at least weather the storm and come out of this okay. But I will just not to guilt anybody. I just want to say that Record Store Day was and is a really big thing for us. In fact, it's bigger than an average month. If you can imagine doing a month's business in like one basic day and the days around it, that's how important that is. So I'm glad that it's happening in some sort of form later this year. However, we lost thousands of dollars in April. And I'm talking like it's devastating. You don't even really realize it's happening until you see it on paper. And then you're like, holy, yeah, mother of God. So, you know, I try to be optimistic. I think that the release schedule later this year is going to be a good one. There will be plenty of things to buy. Whether or not you have the money to buy them is another question. But, I think the music tends to bring the people out. And if it's good, and there's always so much good music, even now. I'm not saying that to sound like I'm some kind of like fogey who's being judgmental. I really do love a lot of new music. So, anyway, I'm hoping that this will work and that, coronavirus won't make a massive return in the fall and blow all of these plans out of the water because there's another unknown variable. Will we only be able to do one or two of the record store day drops and then will the third one get moved? Or I mean, who knows? Maybe that's why they didn't really make a Black Friday announcement, because they're thinking we may need to reserve that for a makeup for one of these others. I have no idea. So, anyway, that's enough. Leave your thoughts, messages, concerns, um, tips at the jar. Um, and I appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Have a great week. It'll probably be another week this time. I don't want to overload you with this mug. All right. Take care. Have a great week. Bye.